Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I really hope you guys are doing well today. And welcome to the first lesson in a brand new series for this channel, where we're going to be working on how to build out the YouTube application for the Android platform using the Kotlin programming language. And so inside of this series, we're going to be focusing on how to build out some of the core components to a fully functional Android application. Now, here's what the application kind of looks like, and right off the bat, you can kind of tell that there's quite a bit going on here. So in order for us to fully understand how to build out these Android apps piece by piece, let's first focus our attention on working on the most common component inside of a mobile app, which is how to build out a vertical list view. And so the traditional approach to building out a list for Android is to actually use something called a ListView, but this component has been kind of deprecated and it's kind of outdated. So for today's lesson, we're going to learn how to use the new and improved component called a RecyclerView to build out our list. Okay, so I hope you're ready to start off today's lesson. Let's go ahead and begin by opening up Android Studio and creating our project right now. All right, so let's get started today by creating a brand new project inside of Android Studio. And I'm going to use File, New, and then New Project up at the very top left corner, which then takes me into this Create New Project wizard. And for the application name, why don't we just call it something sensible like Kotlin YouTube, LBTA, give it a company domain, and store it into somewhere on your computer, obviously. And then hit the next, and make sure to keep this checkbox checked of phone and tablet. I'm going to use API 15, which is Android 4.03, and just hit the next again. And now you can kind of select the activity that you want your project to start off with. So there's a lot of different options to choose from. And I'm just going to use empty activity because it's the easiest activity to work with if you're not familiar with Android. So double click on that and just leave the defaults here for main activity, generate layout file, activity main, and also backwards compatibility checked like so. And now you can hit the finish. And then Android Studio is going to help you create this nice little project, which kind of looks like this inside of the Android Studio editor. So really good stuff. And now what we really want to do is to kind of check out what this project does by hitting the Run button on the very top right. And as you can kind of see, I have a couple of devices or virtual devices that I can pick from. And this guy on the right side is actually this Nexus 5 API 26. And if you don't have any options available here, you can create a new virtual device with this little wizard guy and go through all the steps. And if you do all of that, you should have something selectable inside of this little menu. So I'm going to launch my application by double clicking on the Nexus emulator, and that's going to load my entire app inside of this little screen on the right side. And right off the bat, you'll be able to see this very, very basic template hello world project, which is very, very simple. And now what I want to do is to show you exactly where these files are inside of your project. So your template project comes with main.activity.kt, which is a Kotlin class file, I believe, and also this activity main layout file, which has this hello world component centered in the middle. And so on the left side is your project explorer. Now I used to use the project mode, but I'm getting more and more familiar with the Android mode, which I am liking more and more. So let's use Android view mode to browse our files. And main activity is inside this project package, which is what it's called. And down below inside of res, you have layout, and you also have activity main.xml. So these are the locations for where your files exist. So make sure you are familiar with that. I did make a video a long time ago on getting started with Android Studio, so I'm going to link that down below. So if you want to get more familiar with Android, make sure to check that out. And let's go ahead and move on to what we want to do for today's video. And basically, you can click on these components over here, and you can just hit delete or backspace and run your application again with this instant run lightning button. So click on that. And the emulator is actually pretty quick to reload minor changes. So this actually saves you a lot of time. All right. Now the first thing or the first task for today's video is to learn how to create a list using a RecyclerView component. And it's kind of complicated, but we're going to get through it today. And that list is going to eventually be transformed into this component that you're seeing. And as you can kind of tell right off the bat here, it's a little bit complicated. There's a lot going on. So instead of building out something as complicated as that, let's start off by constructing a list, which is much simpler. It just has a couple of items inside of this vertical axes, and all of these cells here just have a couple of image views as well as text views or labels. You can think of them. So we're going to do that first. And the way you start off with a recycler view or a list view is to actually just drag it into your view somehow. So this is our main view, which is a constraint layout. And so to get to a recycler view inside of the list of components here, you can hit the little magnifying glass and just search for REC, and you'll come across the recycler view. So pretty simple. You can also search for things like image views like that, or even the list view component, which is over there. So let's use REC for recycler view, and I'm going to drag this inside of my constraint layout, and you will see that we are actually doing quite a bit here. And you see down here we have a Gradle process running, and the moment that you actually drag a recycler view inside of your project, it actually helps you do a little bit of magic. So inside of this Gradle scripts drop down, you have this module app build.gradle file, and it actually helped you import the Android RecyclerView support library. So just wanted to make sure you are aware of that. And now let's go back to our activity main layout file. So here is our RecyclerView. You have this little error right here which says that the view isn't constrained to anything. So if you drag this guy down here, you can move it. So if you want to constrain it to the parent, you just do that. You do that as well. Or hopefully that works. So let me just drag this to the right and then drag this to the left. And hopefully that works. Hopefully that is there. So when these little blue dots are filled in, that means that you have some constraints applied to your view. So that's pretty good. If you click on this now, you should have a couple of the constraints showing up as 8, 8, 8, and 8 for the padding. Okay. So the last thing I want to do here is to actually give this recycler view an ID up at the very top right. And let's follow a common convention of calling it recycler view and just say _main. And now what I want to do is to access this recycler view somehow. And so if you hit the instant run button again, you should be able to launch your application with this recycler view instead of the hello world text in the middle. So good stuff. The text is gone, and now we can go into main activity, and I can try to access this recycler view. So let's say REC, and you see recycler view _main is available for me to kind of play around with. And what is the exact thing I want to do here is to say set background color just to see what I can do. And I think I can say color dot blue, and that's what I want to do for now. Hit the instant run. It's going to change our list view to have this bluish background now. So something is wrong with the constraint, I believe, and let's see if I can get this over there. And I believe the layout width and height is incorrect, so let me just change this to match constraint and also match constraint like that, and everything should be okay. Let me hit the instant run again, and the padding, you can kind of see it's better than what it was. So let's go back to main activity, and you can kind of see recycler view is easily accessible by just using the ID that we set up. And this is actually something that's new to Kotlin, and if you're coming from the Android world, you'll realize how difficult it used to be, and now all you need is just one single line of code. All right. So that's how you access your views from within your activities. And that's really, really easy. And now it's time to kind of use our recycler view to render out a list that kind of looks like this over here. So I'm going to admit right off the bat here that recycler view is a little bit complicated. So let's go through this one step at a time. And the first thing you need for your recycler view is a linear layout manager, is what it's called. And this comes with a couple of constructors. So I'm going to use this for the context. And now you can run your code again, and you'll see that the blue color is gone and nothing else has really changed. So the next thing you really need to do for your recycler view is to set up something called an adapter. So what the heck is an adapter? Well, you can kind of think of it as a data source or a UI table view delegate for your list. And those are the iOS terms. And basically it helps you render out your items inside of your list. So this adapter guy, you can either create it down here, or let's create a new file. So new Kotlin file class, and let's call this the main adapter. Hopefully that makes sense. So inside of here, let's create this class called main adapter, subclass it as something. So you need to subclass it as a RecyclerView adapter. And so as you can kind of see through the autocomplete, you have this thing called a VH inside of these bracket things. So this class actually requires a special view holder class as the kind of generic in here. So already it's getting pretty complicated, right? So the first question here is, what exactly do we use main adapter for? And inside of this little subclass, you can say get item count and just return something like 1 or 2. So let's just use 3. And you can kind of remember how UI table view works, right? Your number of items for your table view is kind of returned from a method called number of items, and this is exactly the same thing. So get item count. And so let me just put a comment up there. So let's see, number of items. And the other method for your UI table view data source delegate is cell for item at, and we'll fix that in just a little bit. And let's kind of look at this little error on the right side. And what you really need to get all of this to work is to provide a custom view holder class, which I know is pretty confusing. So let me just fix it first with a custom view holder class. And we need to subclass it with the colon of RecyclerView dot view holder like that. All right. So this view holder, we're going to use it inside of this generic brace. And what we're now missing are these other parameters or other methods that we need to implement. So over here, let me just fix this error as well. I think we need this and this, see v, and then I'll just type in the v over here. So v view, hopefully that should work. Let me import that with, I think it's option enter, and we get the view. So I will probably explain to you what that means a little bit later on. And this right here requires us to import these two methods called onCreateViewHolder. So let's just use that. OnCreateViewHolder, hit enter, you get this method. And the next one is called onBindViewHolder. So let's type that in as well, onBindViewHolder. And now this guy should actually go away. So it says that this type has a constructor and thus must be initialized here. It is a little confusing what that actually means, but you just want to say parentheses to invoke the constructor. So again, confusing Kotlin syntax, but just make sure to put that in your code and everything should be okay. All right, so what exactly can I do with this main adapter now is to just copy that, go back to main activity, and for the adapter, you want to set it to main adapter like that, construct it with just the empty constructor, and go back to main adapter. You can run your project now, and it's not going to exactly work just yet because we don't have these methods implemented. So you see how it says that it kind of stopped. And to figure out what's going on, you want to say messages or logcat down at the very bottom, and it actually tells you what is going wrong in the red here. And it says that an operation is not implemented. So these two methods actually need to be implemented. So you can go to onBindViewHolder, and this guy, you don't really need to do anything just yet. And we're going to fix the onCreateViewHolder method right now. All right, so hopefully everyone out there is still with me. I know if you're coming from a Swift or even a Java background, learning a new language such as Kotlin can be a little confusing, with all of the new syntax and whatnot. But if you stick with it long enough, it should slowly start to make more and more sense. Okay, so let's move on here by finishing up the implementation for this method called onCreateViewHolder. So the first question is, what exactly does it want me to return? Well, basically for our list, we need to render out each one of these cells, for example, this here, here, and here, and we need to create our cell and then return it inside of this method. So let me show you how to do that right now by first removing this line. And so the question is, how do we even create a view? So this is very easily done inside of Android by creating a new layout resource. So let's say new, all the way down here we have XML, create this layout XML. And what do we want to actually give this file name? Well, let's say video row, hit the finish over there. And this is going to represent each one of my videos inside of the finished application. So for example, this row right here. Okay, so if you go inside of here, you can actually change the linear layout to a constraint layout. So constraint layout, hit the enter, wait for it to finish, and there we go. So let's hit enter here. And if you go back to the design, you see that you have this constraint layout UI designer thing for you to play around with. So what exactly do we want to do here? Well, I'm going to build out this very, very simple cell for each one of these rows. And let's just do it very quickly by going into images, image view, drag this sucker in here somewhere. Let's just put it in there. And right off the bat, you can click on one of these resources for the image. So I'll double click on that. We get this little Android icon, and I'm going to constrain it to the top of the view like that, and also to the left and also to the right. Okay, so now it's kind of bound to the parent in this layout, and I'm going to change the width, layout width over there. So if you stretch it out, you get match constraint. It kind of expands fully to the left and right, kind of like this video cell on the emulator. Okay, so really good stuff. And now let's move on to maybe creating one of these title labels, so this channel name or this here we go label. And how do we do that? Well, let's go into the text component list, drag this in here somewhere, so put that down there. I'm going to constrain it to the bottom of the image view, and then also to the left of the entire parent, I suppose. Doesn't really matter what you do as long as you understand what's going on. So we have the left, right, and the top, and I can change this to match constraint again to fully expand it from the left and right like that. All right, so really good stuff. And one thing that you do want to change is the image view, and you probably want to give it a ID that makes sense, but we don't really need to do that right now. So we can go back to our main adapter and finish off this method by somehow grabbing a hold of this view for our list view. So go back to the adapter, and how do I actually get one of these views that I need to return? Well, we use something called a layout inflator. So val layout inflator, and we'll say layout inflator, and we'll say dot use from, and this comes with a context constructor. So you can grab the context from the parent, which is this view group parameter right above. And because this is an optional, you should use a question mark here, and the little red arrow is going to go away. Okay, so val, let's say cell, see cell for row. So that particular cell, you grab it from the layout inflator, and you just call this method called inflate like that. And so inside of here, we can use a couple of different method calls, and I'm going to use the third one right here, which requires a resource. So the resource you grab from your video row, this XML file, by saying r.layout. So you see layout see, layout dot, what do we have here? Video row is now available. And for the next couple of parameters, you just want to say parent. So I'm going to use the root of view group and attach root boolean. So let's say parent and also false, and you should be okay. So finally, you have to return this cell for your row, but you can't just really do this because it expects you to use this custom view holder class over there. So let's just do that and construct a custom view holder. So I'm going to run this right now with the instant change button. It's going to compile my project, and immediately inside of the emulator, you should start to see this row for my RecyclerView. So really good stuff. And if I drag the RecyclerView up and down, you'll see 3 of these items inside of my list. So that's kind of how that works. If you modify this to just 1, make this change over there, and the application will load. Can't really drag it up and down. You just have 1 item. And so the reason why this entire cell is that large is because the video row, if you click on constraint layout, you want to change the height to actually wrap content. And that's going to modify the entire cell so that it only has enough height to capture all the items in it. So hit the instant run again. And so now that I've changed my main adapter to return 4 items, you see that all of these cells are kind of being rendered out very, very short instead of the entire screen. Okay, so the final thing that you want to do for your list is to modify the text view to say something else instead of just the word of text view. So let me do that by going back into the video row. And this text view thing, if you double click on it, you'll get to this text, and this needs to be video title like that. Hit enter, you can run it again. You'll see that it modifies to video title. So this video title text view, let me give it an ID of text view video underscore title, hit enter, go back to my adapter. Okay, so for the method of onBind view holder, you can actually modify the video title text by using some code, and I'll show you how to do that right now. And the first thing I actually want to modify is this little constructor, which I'll call this view instead of just the word v, and let's just modify that as well. And now you can access that view with holder, which is this parameter up above, and you can say view as well. And now down below you can access this video title thing. So text view video title, which is that over there, and you can say dot text equals, let's see, 1 2 3, and you should be okay. So this requires a question mark and another question mark because this is an optional. And let's just see, I think another question mark is required over there. Hit the instant run, and you should be able to get your cell to render out each one of your items with 1 2 3. So the next question is, how exactly do I make my list a little bit more dynamic instead of just having 4 items with 1 2 3 for the text? Well, it's actually very easy if you create this array of strings or a list of strings. So val video titles, I guess, equals list of, and this guy, you can specify a string in here if you want to. And let's say first title, and then second, and then third, or third, like that. And now you have a list of 3 strings. You don't really need to specify this if these are all just strings, so you can just remove that and everything should be okay. So video titles, we will use get item count of video titles dot size or count. I'm not sure which one's better, but that's going to give you 3 instead of the 4. So if you run this, you'll get 3 items. And now for the text, you actually have to modify this over here very easily using this position variable. So what exactly do we want to do there? Well, let's get some extra space. We actually just want to get the video title from this array. So let's say val video titles equals video titles, and you just say get with the index of the position. So this is 0 1 2, and this down below is just going to say video title. That's probably a better name for this variable up there, video title. And now you can run your application one more time. And instead of 1, 2, 3, you have first title, second, and third. And as you modify your list, so more titles, you will get that to show up inside of this vertical recycler view. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for today's video on how to use this RecyclerView component to construct a vertical list using the Kotlin programming language. And again, if this is one of your very first times creating a Kotlin application using a RecyclerView, you're probably not going to be super familiar with the Kotlin syntax and all these new concepts. So make sure to just sit down, take some time to look at the code, and you'll get pretty familiar with it after a while. Okay, so if you're interested in downloading the source code for today's video, make sure to check it out using the link in the description below. Any questions or comments, you can leave them down below as well. Make sure to leave a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. That's going to be it for me today. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye guys.